Hey everyone. I hope everyone's having a good week. I wanted to share a passage from the book of Matthew. And a little bit of context to the book of Matthew. Um, the author Matthew writes about Jesus in a way to demonstrate who Jesus is as the King of Kings and as the Lord of Lords. And so when we read the book of Matthew, I think there's a lot of key passages where the author uses a lot of Old Testament prophecies to basically demonstrate that Jesus is the long-awaited Messiah, that Jesus is the King. He is the one who will take away our sins, and that he's conquered over sin and death. So I wanted to take a passage from this book, and I think it's helpful to see this book through that lens as well, because a lot of the examples and a lot of the teachings um, really points to kind of showing that this Jesus that we worship, this Jesus that we talk about, is someone who is right. He's more than just another guy, or he's just more than just a good teacher, but he's in fact the King, and he is full authority over all things, all creation, and all people. So I'm going to turn to chapter 8, verses 5 to 13. And I picked this passage as a devotional, I think, because it really emphasizes kind of a correct approach to how, a correct approach to how I think we should view Jesus. And so it starts when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him, appealing to him, saying, "Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly." And Jesus said to him, "I will come and heal him." But the centurion replied, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority with soldiers under me, and I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, "Truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And to the centurion Jesus said, "Go, let it be done for you as you have believed." And the servant was healed at that very moment. Again, the book of Matthew is really emphasizing the authority that Jesus has as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. There's the King over all creation, and so the response of the centurion is the part that I really wanted to focus on. This part I felt like spoke out to me as I was reading this specific passage, or specifically chapter 8. When the centurion says, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof," I think it demonstrates his acknowledgement of who Jesus is as someone who is of higher authority than him, and so he shows respect to Jesus by saying that I can't even have you come live in my house because you're just that much greater. Like, I'm not worthy to like be in the same like building as you because you're just that much greater. And he continues by saying, "For I too am a man under authority with soldiers under me, and I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." Um, Additionally, he's listed as a centurion, meaning that he's a Roman soldier. And as someone who's a soldier, I think they quickly recognize authority. They live in basically um, they live basically under authority, and they live with authority. So they answer to those who have authority over them, and they have authority. And when they tell someone to do something who is under them, they expect it to be done, and it will be done because those under him are subject to them. So when he says this to Jesus, he's basically saying, "Jesus, I know you have all power, and that you have power to do even this thing, such as healing my servants. You have power to do basically anything." And so what the centurion basically has is he has faith in the authority of Jesus Christ. And his faith in Jesus is rewarded. Firstly, we see that Jesus heals at the very end in verse 13, he says, "Go, let it be done, for as you have believed." And the servant was healed at that very moment. So we see that Jesus responds positively towards the centurion's faith. He basically says that because you believed, like I've healed because you've believed in me. Additionally, in verse 10, it says that when Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, "Truly, I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith." And and so the centurion is, in a sense, rewarded by being documented in the Bible as someone who Jesus has marveled at. Um, basically, basically showing us how surprised that Jesus is that someone such as a Roman soldier, someone who's not even Jewish, someone who doesn't really even believe in the same things that um, Jesus does, has the faith to recognize that Jesus is someone with authority. So Jesus is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so I think I want to think about um, if the centurion responds this way to Jesus, how do we respond to Jesus on a day-to-day basis? And and I know that a lot of times we like to think of Jesus as, um, as my best friend. He's my brother. He's someone I'm close to. Uh, and others, other people might say, well, Jesus, he was just a good man. Other people might say, well, Jesus, he was a good teacher, right? He led a moral life. He taught a lot of good things, but he was in the end just still a man. So there will be people. I think there are people who think of Jesus in that way as well. But based on what this passage has said, and kind of bringing it back to our lives, is uh, how do we really view Jesus in our lives? Do we view him in the ways that I mentioned before, or do we view Jesus as the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, who has full authority over heaven and earth? At the end of Matthew, kind of the last things that he tells his disciples is, I have all authority in heaven and earth, and so therefore go and make disciples of all nations. And so again, we see how really the author of Matthew is demonstrating to us who Jesus is as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, someone who has full authority over all things. And so um, I want us to ask ourselves, do we see Jesus in the same way? Is Jesus someone who has full authority um, over the earth, over creation, over healing, um, over my sin, over those who have died, over death? Um, does Jesus have that power in my life? Do I believe that Jesus has that power, or is Jesus simply my best friend? And I think that's something that I feel like I've been wrestling with lately is um, giving Jesus the full respect that he deserves as the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. That he's not just someone I just pal up with, um, but he's really truly someone who deserves all glory and all authority, and someone who I can pray to. I pray to him because I believe and I have faith that he can do all these things, and more than just telling him about my day, but asking him to do the impossible, asking him to do things that I can't do on my own. And so I hope that this devotional was encouraging to you. I hope that it was helpful um, in being able to remind us of who Jesus is as King of Kings and Lord of Lords.